Hello and welcome to the People Who Read People podcast. This is Zach Elwood. Today is August 3rd, 2019. My guest today is Olu Popoola. He's a forensic linguistics researcher, corporate trainer, and learning developer. He conducts workshops and does consulting for fraud investigators and solicitor advocates on subjects of deception detection and credibility assessment. He's a doctoral researcher at the University of Birmingham in UK. He studied law at King's College London and then did postgraduate research at the Center for Forensic Linguistics at Aston University. He's a member of the International Association of Forensic Linguists and a fellow of the Higher Education Academy. Regarding his deception detection research, here are a few of the things he's worked on: detecting deception in Amazon reviews, detecting deception in the statements of athletes who talked about the use of performance enhancing drugs, detecting indicators of fake news and propaganda. Olu also has a blog that he calls Outlier, which is Outliar, Outlier, where he writes about his work. And you can find that blog at outlier.blog. That's Outliar.blog. And you can also find him on Twitter at OE Popoola. That's OEPOPOOLA. And he shares a lot of cool and interesting stuff about language and deception on there. And I recommend following him if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Hi, Olu. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, Zach. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for joining me and being willing to talk about your work. It's very interesting stuff. So was that a pretty good synopsis there of your work? Anything else major you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, that's a good synopsis. And I've also worked on a couple of other things, actually. I worked on a child abuse case, which was actually what first got me into deception detection. I can't really talk about the details of that because there's an embargo on that, but that was a quite a big project. And I also worked on a native language identification project related to the Guccifer hacker. Myself and a couple of colleagues at University of Birmingham were trying to figure out what was the language of origin, and there was a bit of deception detection work in that as well, because we identified that there was more than one author.
Right. Could you remind the viewers what Guccifer, what the story was behind that, really quickly?
That was regarding the hack of the Democratic Convention emails, and it was a question: who was this person? This was Gucci for 2.0, because the original Gucci for was a Romanian and was had been caught. So this
Mm.
person was pretending to be related, but according to our linguistic analysis, we figured that the person was not Romanian, but was Russian, likely Russian, and possibly with a Dutch influence.
Mm.
Which sounds a bit odd, but we did subsequently find that there were reports of Russians in Holland working on hacking in this area. So we think we might have been on point with that.
Did they figure out who that was, or that was not solved?
They didn't figure out who it was, but they did narrow it down to a Russian intelligence cell based in Holland.
And you had your work helped narrow down some of the language clues to Holland related and Russia related.
Yes, we were not asked to. Our research wasn't given to the FBI or anything like that, but
Mhm.
it's out there, and it did corroborate a lot of the theories that were going on at the time.
Okay, so let's talk about linguistic analysis in general. I know that you had told me that the concept of coherence is a very important one when analyzing text. Can you explain a little bit about what coherence means in that context?
Okay, so coherence is how a text is put together, how a speaker or a writer puts a text together. So a writer might put a text together as a series of elaborations. You talk about something, then you add some more information, and you add some more information. Another text might be put together as a series of contrasts. You talk about something and you compare it or contrast it with something else. Another text might be put together as a series of phenomena and results, causes and effects.
Right. So it's like something that's incoherent. A text that's incoherent would just be a bunch of random sentences that don't relate to each other. But
Yes.
when
Yes.
you study coherence, you're studying like how the phrases and the clauses and the phrases and the sentences relate to each other as a whole.
Exactly, and so the very different linguistic systems that I use, and I'm developing one myself. They're called coherence relations. They're different ways of gelling your text together. Exactly that.
How these things interact basically as like sort of like a machine almost.
Yes, yes, exactly that. Exactly that.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I first read about that when reading about your work, that there was this kind of more scientific way to approach that in an objective way, and it sounds like you said, there's different ways people have constructed, different systems people have constructed for how to compare those coherence relations.
Yes, so I've been using one particular system. It's called rhetorical structure theory, RST, and that was my initial foray, if you like, into using coherence relations for deception detection, which is a new way of looking at deception. I thought it would be could be a useful way because coherence, it gets at the mental representations that a speaker or a writer is holding. So, and deception is a cognitive act. So it's another way of getting into the mind of the potential deceivers. So I thought coherence
Mhm.
relations would be good for that. RST is good, but it has a lot of relations, about 30, and I don't need them all. So I'm working on a stripped down version where we just look at some basics, like if you think about how people talk, it's almost like basic, logical operators. You have ands and you have ors and you have nots. Think about your basic search queries, things like that. So
Mhm.
I'm now looking at just very basic ways of gelling of text and relating parts of text together. Are they related with and relations? Are they related with or, like alternative or contrast relations? Are they related with
Mhm.
not relations? Are they therefore or because relations? Very simple
Mhm.
ones like this.
One thing I wanted to ask was about the rhetorical structure theory. Was that something that was had been used before for deception detection, or was that new with you to try to use that system
It,
for
it,
that?
it was new of me to use that system on naturally occurring texts, on real world texts,
Mm.
for deception detection. It's been used for a whole load of things in education, for example. It's been used a lot. It's been used to compare argumentation in different languages. So it's been used a lot, but it had been used once for deception detection, where people had been invited to make up true and false stories, that kind of psychological experiment, but it had not been used on real world actual texts. That was an innovation on my part. The reason why people have not been rushing to use it is because it's something that computers still cannot be automated. It relies on human
You have to
annotation.
parse it and analyze it a bit,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, one quick aside on that rhetorical structure theory, kind of a neat background because it was created for trying to create an algorithm for understanding speech and making machine speech more natural. Isn't that how
Yeah.
it was created?
Yes, exactly that, and so that machines could communicate themselves.
Yeah, and then when they were making it for that purpose of making machine speech more human, it led to them having to analyze speech in general and then reach this kind of coherence relations system for structuring and analyzing language, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like they're trying to create it for one thing, and then that required creating a whole system for analyzing language.
Yeah. There's a bunch of early computational linguists in the 80s who thought, okay, well, we've got to figure out, in order to make machines speak, we've got to figure out how do humans put words together so that it doesn't sound like gibberish. And yeah, they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where, if you haven't examined it or thought about the rules that govern it, we tend to take a lot of things in human life for granted, but then when you look beneath the hood, it's tremendously, insanely complex. And yeah, we just intuitively understand all of these things that are very complex. So when you did the Amazon review research, we can talk a little bit about that. What were some of the major pattern indicators you found in those?
So the with the Amazon, it was Amazon book reviews. The first thing I found is that the real positive reviews, they always contained some caveats. They'll say how much they loved it in the 5-star review, but they will try to anticipate what a reader might not like.
So it would be something like, I thought this book was great, but something something.
Yes, exactly. So you might not like the violence. It might be a bit violent for some people, but
Hmm.
it's a fantastic book. And I did a bit of reading around this, and I found that it's a convention, not just in book reviews, but in movie reviews, and it's a convention in English and in also in Japanese. I talked to some European friends, and they said, "Oh, in Spanish, it's not like that. You just wax lyrical. You're just really positive, and you don't worry about hedging your positivity." So, I think Japanese and English. There's a lot of politeness in those languages, and I think that spills over into conventions around evaluating something. You always try and give both sides. So it's not a universal trend, but definitely in English language, you hedge your praise. But the fake reviews, and I did this research on this data set, which was not put together by me. It was put together by a couple of researchers, Massimo Poesio, who is a professor at Queen Mary's University in London. He worked with the investigative research of David Straightfield, who's a New York Times journalist who done an investigation into fake book review factories sometime in 2012, 2013. So using is very, very nicely done, because the thing about deception research is finding the lies, because you need to be able to compare known lies with known truths. And what Professor Poesio did, he worked out, okay, these people confessed to buying fake reviews. These authors confessed to buying fake reviews. These writers confessed to writing them. So, with a small bunch of confessions, he was able to find thousands of reviews that were very likely to be fake. It was police work to put together a hit list of very likely fake reviews, and it's the best list that's available. So I wrote to Dr. Fornaciari, who is actually an Italian police officer, and Professor Poesio, and I got the data set, and I said to them, "Have you?" They were looking at it in terms of machine learning and engrammed and this kind of very computational work, and I said, "Oh, has anybody looked at it in terms of coherence relations?" And they said, "No, go ahead, good luck." Um, so I did that, and the fake reviews, they were all positive. There was no hedging. That was the first thing I found.
Hmm.
Second thing I found was that they were very they retold the plot a lot. This made them look real. because they must have read the story, but the information was what you could glean from press release or from the back of a book.
Right. No real interesting detail like people would honestly have if they'd read the book and give, feedback or opinion along the way. It was just kind of a retelling of a
Yes,
boring retelling of the story. Yeah.
yes, it was a retelling. There was no opinion, there was no nuance. It was a retelling, like a trailer for a movie. That was interesting. Often, and they were very well written. Often written in a quite a professional way.
Hmm.
And I did some tests, and I've got on my blog a version of the test that I did. But I did some tests showing these reviews to some people. Which ones do you think are real? Which ones do you think are fake? And people naturally they go for the professionally written one with a retelling of the story. Um,
Mm.
they go for that, and somebody's writing, not very well, and they said, "Oh, I really loved it. You might not like this," and it's kind of broken English, and the punctuation is like, "Well, I think, oh, that must be fake," but um,
Hmm. Hmm.
it wasn't like that. The retelling was fake. The professionality, the high standard of the writing was fake.
It makes you think of in interrogations they say something similar, right? Because the liars will have really rehearsed their stories, and the people telling the truth will have a lot of starts and stops and various diversions when they tell their story. But the liar is just telling trying to tell what they rehearsed.
Yes,
Not the same, but it kind of reminded me of that.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, it is like that. Other things that came out were you would get sob stories or stories about family. One fake reviewer had a very similar pattern of starting with by relating the purchase of the book to something in her family life.
Yeah, I saw that one. Is that the one where I thought it would be the perfect gift to my husband?
Yeah, yeah,
Is it that one?
exactly.
Yeah. Actually, I'll just read that now because I thought that was an interesting one. The review goes, "The cover of Circle of Lies by Douglas Allen really caught my eye first as what I thought would be the perfect gift to my husband. I started reading it myself and could not put it down."
Yeah, exactly. That that's one. And the same reviewer wrote one about there was some book about bullying, and she started off with, "Oh, my son was bullied at school, so that's what drew me to this book." And then she talks about the book.
Right. It's almost like they're self-conscious because they know they're making it up, and it's almost like they, unconsciously want to prove that they really got this book, and they belabor the point too much about how they got the book or why they have the book.
Yes, that's a really good point, and this is what helps in deception detection because liars try to appear truthful. Deceivers try and appear truthful, but truth tellers usually are not trying really hard to appear truthful.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, deceivers are trying harder than truth tellers to appear truthful.
Right. It's like looking at some of the examples there, we're almost like you said, it was almost like a what they thought a book review should look like based on going to school. It was really neat and like something they were going to turn in as a paper almost,
Yeah,
which most people writing a real review are not in that mode of constructing it like that. They're just writing what they thought as they go because they don't care.
yeah, absolutely right.
So one other interesting pattern in there in your study was about the nuclear discourse unit and the placement of it. Can you talk a little bit about that pattern?
Yes. So in coherence analysis, the nuclear discourse unit is the central part of a text, meaning it's the part of the text that most nodes or most other parts of a text relate to this one. So
Is it almost like a kind of a synopsis or like a summary almost kind of?
yes, so I could start by saying this book is fantastic, and then I give reasons why it's fantastic. Then the sentence, "This book is fantastic," is the central node in that text because the way that the text is structured is evaluation followed by reasons. So that's the structure of a text, and you can draw that, and the central node will be the initial evaluation. Another, to take a text from a different genre. There's a funny genre of stories which you get in the UK. They end with, and then I found £5. So it's a really boring story.
So that's like a joke story you say is
Yeah,
funny. Yeah.
yeah. Like, oh, what's the point of this story? What's the point of this story? I woke up in the morning and I cleaned my teeth and I had a coffee and I put on my slippers and then I found £5. So
Wait, is that like the English version of "cool story, bro"? Have you ever heard that?
no, I haven't. What's that?
People say that when somebody tells a boring story, they say "cool story, bro." So
Right. Yeah.
I kind of thought
But
it, maybe it was like a self-effacing version of the same idea.
it sounds like that. You use it to rescue your story. So in that case, and then I find £5 is the central unit, the nuclear discourse unit of that text, because all the other sentences and phrases are only have a point in relation to that phrase, and then I found £5. So nuclear discourse unit is the central part of a text. And what I found with the reviews is that the central part of a text is different for fake reviews than real reviews. For fake reviews, it tended to come at the beginning of a text and it tended to be name the author or the name of the book.
Right. Like here's an example from one of them. It says this was the first sentence in the review. It says Hobet's Secret Study Guide, your key to exam success. That's the name of the book, the entire name of the book right there. So they say, yeah, the name of the book is a no nonsense approach to studying for and taking the Hobet exam.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
a summary right there.
Yeah, exactly. So it starts off with that, and they name the name, they name the author. It's almost like you've got to write about who's paying you.
And it kind of gets back to they're almost writing it like they've been taught to write papers. It's like you have to put your summary statement at the top, say what you're going to say, and then say,
Yeah, then say
wrap it up at the end, with the summary, and they kind of reminds me of that.
yes, it is like that, and you've got to say, you've got to show that you've done a good job for your paymaster.
Hmm.
So you name check. It's like if you're going to an interview to work for a company, and they say, "Oh, how would you present this company to prospective customers?" And you would say, "Oh, okay, such and such company is this." You would write a speech, and you would name all the main people in the company, and you'd make sure the logo was in there. You're giving yourself
Hmm.
away as somebody who is working for somebody.
Right, and that would explain the lack of caveats too, because they'd be even if they thought that was potentially a good thing to include for realism, they'd be unlikely to do it because they wouldn't want to, hurt perception.
Yeah, you can't imagine your paymaster is saying, "Well, the violence is a bit cheesy, but
Yeah.
the author is not going to be necessarily best impressed." So and also, what I found with the caveats is backed up by a lot of research done on deception detection in investigative settings, where they found that liars can't hold contrary opinions about something they haven't experienced.
Mm.
So a liar cannot talk about the good points and bad points about something that they haven't done or haven't experienced. That's been found in other research and is used in investigations. For example, you would ask them, "Oh, what do you think about X? What do you think about race? Do you think there's any difference between whites and blacks? Do you think what do you think about the difference between whites and blacks?" So they say, "Oh, no, I think whites and blacks are equal." So why would somebody think that whites are better? A racist would be able to talk about that without saying, "Oh, these are not my thoughts," but people would say whites are better because such and such. Okay. Why would you think that? Why would people say that blacks are better? they wouldn't be able to answer that.
Mm.
So this is a strategy that's used in investigations to kind of find out if people have strong views or fanatics in a certain area. A fanatic cannot talk about the other side, the
Mm.
other point of view. Somebody that is neutral or less biased can talk about both sides.
Right. And are they not savvy enough to know that they shouldn't be talking about those things? Like they just don't know that they might be giving that information away, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and they also might think that that they can,
They
the
can do it.
reason, yeah,
Yeah.
that they can do it. Tests have been done on people. They've been asked to lie about their attitudes to abortion. For example, there's a series of experiments done by James Pennebaker in the early 2000s, looking at attitudes to abortion. If you believe that abortion is not okay, it's hard for you to argue that convincingly that abortion is okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can imagine them trying to do it, and one side would be the side they believe would be very detailed, and then the side they didn't believe would just be very cursory and no
That's
details. Yeah.
exactly it. So you can use that, in interrogations and in my work with fraud investigators. This is one of the techniques that I introduce to them with the aim of enhancing the differences between liars and truth tellers. So there are some strategies for making the differences more clear, the linguistic differences between liars and truth tellers more clear. One of the strategies is to tell the story, get somebody to tell a story backwards. Another strategy is to get somebody to give both sides. In both situations, liars, they can't tell a story backwards, something that they haven't experienced. They find that very difficult. And as we just discussed, people who don't really hold a certain opinion find it hard to argue about it.
hmm hmm Yeah, it makes you think a better Amazon review format would be like a two columns of pros and cons or something.
That's absolutely right. Do you know the website? I don't know if you have it in the US, Glassdoor.
Yeah, yeah. I've used that. Yeah.
Right. So they have a template, pros,
Oh, right.
cons.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
That is what Amazon should do. Now they probably have thought about it, and they maybe it doesn't make it's not so attractive for
Yeah,
their.
yeah. I imagine they try to keep everything as as light and friendly as possible, as opposed to Glassdoor, which is more in depth. Their brand is more in depth, and
Yeah, but that's exactly what would really help.
hmm.
If I were to have a meeting with Amazon, that is what I would be recommending. Absolutely.
Though I'd imagine, but would you agree that? Do you sometimes feel that the deceivers are just getting better at their jobs? Like fake account creators, like on Facebook, are getting better at those jobs, and then deceivers, like on Amazon, I'm sure have learned the major tipping points. But then again, maybe it doesn't matter that much to fake review creators because I don't think Amazon really polices that stuff very well to begin with. So maybe that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of an arms race. We do this interview, people listen, they adapt their strategies. That the people used to be able to tell scam emails by the low quality of English, by the spelling mistakes and things like that.
Yeah, now they're
But
quite good. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I remember them ramping up in quality just over the last few years. Where now I'll see them a good one, a good phishing attempt, and I'm like, hey, that's pretty good. Good job, guys.
yeah, yeah, and comments in newspapers like the paid comments. You used to be able to tell the Russian bots, if you like, from the poor language and the incoherence, the non sequiturs that you would find in the comments. But that's improved, and people, they integrate themselves into the previous comments very well, and they write very well, and it becomes
hmm
harder to detect.
Yeah, and I don't know if you knew this, but I worked on some analysis of fake Facebook accounts, and I wrote a article that got gets pretty good traffic about recognizing fake Facebook accounts, all the different indicators, ones that are deceptive and operated by using fake pictures and fake names. And yeah, and while I did that, I was just wondering, like, am I just making it easier uh, for these guys? They're just going to take that and be like, oh, okay, well, we'll make sure the URL doesn't have a different name than our display name. That's a new checkbox for them. But what can you do though? You got to try to out the lies though.
I think it is making it easier, but I think that fundamentally, because deceivers have different aims, you will they will hit a brick wall. They will not be able to be completely truthful because they have different aims. For example, a deceiver's aim is to create false belief. There is certain language that you need in order to create belief. You need to use in order to create belief. If I just describe something in like an encyclopedia, I'm not creating any belief. In order to create belief, I need to foreground certain information. I need to background other information. I need to be slightly persuasive. There's it's a different function from giving directions or explaining a recipe or describing a room. So you need to draw on different language, and this is the main direction of my research to kind of identify this grammar of deception, if you like. And I believe that exists because deception is the basic functions involved, which is the creation of belief.
I mean, for certain use cases though, like say Amazon reviews, I mean, it seems like the fake review creator can succeed at his job with some basic set of skills, because even if you come in later and say, I think there's a good chance that's deceptive. Like Amazon or all these services are not going to remove these things if it meets a few basic things. Like they're not going to take the risk of removing something, if it has like even a pretty high percentage of being fake, because then they'd just be removing a lot of real reviews accidentally sometimes, and pissing people off. So it's kind of like, for some of these applications anyway, it kind of seems like even figuring out a lot of these patterns won't result in too many fixes. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I would agree with that. I think that you've got to solve it on platforms like Amazon. You've got to look at it at a macro level. So you have to look not at individual reviews, but you have to look at the whole at products. It's the product discourse, i.e., the whole set of reviews and consumer communication about a product. That is what is corrupt. So you've got to take down the product rather than take down individual reviews and leave other reviews. You've got to think of the whole system, the whole ecosystem. And what's happening is that fake reviews have contaminated that system. You take the whole thing down, and you are able to detect fake reviews, I think, more easily if you look at the whole product together, because the balance of reviews and language in the reviews in a sequence of fake reviews is going to be different to that of genuine reviews. This is what I
Mhm.
found in when I looked at I found hints of this when I was looking at the Clinton reviews.
And that was Hillary Clinton's book, right? That came out about a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you notice with that?
Okay. So with that, I took all the reviews that were available from the launch day for 1 month. What I found was that in the first day, there were like 500 reviews, and then in the next 6 days, there were 500 reviews, and then in the next 3 weeks, there were 500 reviews. So obviously, the rate of reviewing per day rapidly decreased. Now, that's a trend that you'll find to some extent with other books, but not as
Hmm.
marked as that. to go from 500 reviews a day to 20 reviews a day in 2 weeks suggests some intentional, organized reviewing. Then what you're looking for is linguistic evidence of an organized campaign, you see. Rather than looking at individual reviews for signs of deception, you're looking at the whole set of reviews for organized campaign.
Right. So you would notice, you'd be looking for, yeah, if a bunch of the ones that came in on the first day all had some similar aspects, that would be a pretty fishy sign. Yeah.
Yes, yes, exactly. And if periodically, like every weekend midnight for the first 4 weeks, there are a bunch of similar reviews, that's going to be suspicious.
Oh, right. So you're looking at the schedule of it too,
Yes,
right? That makes sense.
yeah.
So, an edit here. I cut out a good portion of the interview here because I realized I was talking about something in a bad, wrong way. So, I'm going to rephrase the gist of what I was saying in a more accurate way. When it comes to publishers and authors promoting their books on Amazon, it's thought that Amazon's algorithm promotes you based on large numbers and short time periods. So, for example, it's known that getting a lot of sales in a short 1 day period of time can result in someone being a bestseller in that book category. And it's thought that the number of reviews is also important in a similar way. Increasing both sales and reviews is thought to help create a snowball like effect to more and more notice and more sales. Having my own books on Amazon and knowing other people who've published books, I know it's a common strategy to give away advance copies to fans and interested bloggers and to try to strongly encourage reviews on that first couple of days. I haven't done this myself because actually I think it's a bit deceptive, but I know that this is a common practice. In short, reviews are obviously important, but it's thought that getting a big spike of reviews in that first few days is very important. And then this helps explain so many reviews from those first few days on Amazon, even though objectively these reviews don't make much sense, because what kind of normal reader has had time to read the book at that point and review it? And those are just some of my thoughts on the subject. I'm not an Amazon algorithm expert or anything like that, and there's other people that write about those kinds of things online. Okay, back to the interview. So, with the Hillary Clinton one, what
Mm.
was your final take? I don't think you were able to confirm
No,
which ones were fake, but you probably had some opinions about it, right?
yeah. So the reviews in the first few days were very different in style. They were tribute reviews where they were just praising Hillary Clinton.
No caveats.
No caveats. The later reviews were either stories of the experience of the reader with the book. It was such a topical and emotive issue that commentary, common people wanted to comment on it. So, and I guess
Hmm.
it's non-fiction. So the later reviews contained a lot of commentary. I agree with this. I didn't know about such and such. So it was more like pundits. Everybody became an expert. So the later reviews contain a lot of commentary, not so much on the quality of the book, but on the events of what happened. So they're adding to the discourse of what happened. So they might not actually be about the book. You know, public conversation about the events of that election, but the early ones were just tributes. And what I think happened was, and I read somewhere something that might corroborate this, maybe the Democratic Party or just people working for Hillary Clinton, they have a mailing list, they send books out.
Hmm.
A couple of reviews actually said, "Oh, I received my copy today." A couple of reviews said that. So, is there anything wrong with that? Is that deceptive? People are not going to have time to read it. They're going to review it. Some have said, "Oh, I haven't finished it yet," but some have said that. So, is it deceptive if you send books out to your fan base and ask them to review it early because some mean people are writing bad reviews?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's on the very low scale of what's deceptive and bad. But yeah, it's always, for me, because I'd consider doing something like that, because I easily could have gotten, if I'd done a lot of early mailings of my books and tried to get people to review it early. I could have done something like that and have a lot more Amazon reviews. But yeah, it always just felt a bit deceptive to me, just a bit coercive to ask people to do that for one thing and pressure them, and also the sense that like then they're writing reviews that are a bit pressured, and then that's kind of deceiving other people. So yeah.
Yeah, it depends on how removed you can be from it. If you could like talk to an agent, you've got to be quite big. If you can talk to an agency and they organize it for you and you just pay them a bunch of money,
Then you're absolved
yeah,
of responsibility.
you can step away from it. You can step away from it a
Right, right. Yeah, it's easier to use a gun than a knife, right?
bit.
Yeah. So would you ever take a job at Amazon or a similar company like that working on those kinds of issues, or are you not really interested in that kind of thing?
I was asked this. I have a friend working at Amazon. He's a computational linguist guy, and he said, "Oh, they got some jobs going. Do you want to get a job?" We were working on some research together, and when he got the job at Amazon, we had to stop because basically Amazon view reviews and anything on their website as their product. We, the public, we view Amazon reviews as information for the public, but for them it's this is their product. So in that respect, I said to him, "Oh, I've got these, done this research and stuff. Maybe you can get me a meeting at Amazon." And he said, "Well, if you come in at Amazon and talk about the stuff, they'll just take it." So in that respect, I thought, well, to make a difference, maybe the only way is to work for Amazon. And
Mm,
the same with Facebook. If you want to figure out content moderation and make a difference, you've got to go and work with them. You can't do it from the outside. So I think about it in those terms. But ultimately, I think that education is the way forward. I work with students and researchers at university on critical thinking, and my approach to it is human deception detection. And as you mentioned earlier, I work with in the corporate world with like fraud investigators and such. Training again, it's training to raise awareness of how to detect deception using linguistics. So I'm into training and education, and I think I prefer to do that than become a corporate mole. Although I have respect for people who try to do it from the inside, I'm not sure that that's the most effective way for me. I think education. So and
hmm
that's why I do the blog. I put this information out there. I want people to read it and figure it out and use it themselves.
Yeah, it's a great blog, and again, that's at Outlier outliar.blog. Yeah, speaking of education, I've really played around with in my just brainstorming an idea for mobilizing people to do one-on-one kind of talking to people about the fake news they're sharing, like on Facebook. Because I'm in a lot of pro-Trump Facebook groups where there's just like complete ignorance and fake news shared, and I see people responding in the comments, that believe it. And I've actually had a good amount of traction, like explaining to them one on one in a polite way. Here's the real story, or here's how this was skewed, or you're reading a Macedonian fake news site that makes money on clicks, and they just want to rile you up. So I've thought about ways to kind of mobilize people in sort of a nonprofit way, or maybe just write a standard for people who want to help, and then go out there and talk to these people on these Facebook groups. Because I really do feel like that has shown traction. Like I'll have people respond and be like, "Oh, thanks, I didn't know that," and then I'll share something else like, "Oh, look at this article about all the fake news on Facebook." So yeah, I just wanted to mention that because I think there's a lot of stuff when people are frustrated these days about all the fake news and ignorance. I think there's a lot you can do one on one, and if somebody wanted to devote a little bit of time to that as like I want to spend a few hours a week talking to people one on one in a polite manner on Facebook and just making them more skeptical about the things they're seeing on these sites. I think that would be valuable.
I think it's really worthwhile, and it's like with well, it's like with climate change, not just in terms of the denial, but with actually, with with saving the planet. Every individual person thinks that they can't make a difference, but you
Mhm.
can make a difference if you do your recycling. Each individual person can make a difference, and I think it's the same with educating people to critical thinking and deception detection. One conversation and making one person think again can make a difference. Absolutely agree.
Yeah, and then it's also sometimes people feel like they can't make a difference, but they forget that the things they do influence other people. So you talk to one person, and that person talks to other people. Maybe you talk to somebody online, a stranger, and then they tell their friends like that's fake, man.
Mm.
Uh, I think that people discount how quickly change can happen. I think because they forget about that impact.
Yes, I remember the flat Earth thing going around. Do you remember that a few years ago?
Oh, I think it's still with us.
Yeah. Periodically, it gets shared around, and I remember it happening a few years ago, and having some friends of mine, discussing it in a credible way, saying that, well, I don't know if the earth is flat, but it's definitely not completely round. There is a straight line somewhere, and showing me all these different images. And, maybe that's why the Bermuda Triangle exists, because that bit is straight, and all these
uh,
yeah,
oh boy.
and and all this stuff. And I had conversations with them and gave them a different perspective. And I said, "Have you thought about how, this comes in waves?" And this was actually before the Cambridge Analytica thing and the whole Facebook data collection thing broke. But at the time, I thought, you know what, this is like a psyop. This is a way of they're finding out all the believers of all the flat Earth believers. What a great database!
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
any
very very valuable.
yeah, because
Yeah.
you've got a database of gullible fools.
Yeah, I've thought about that too. I was saying the Trump email marketing list must be one of the most valuable substances in the known universe.
Yeah.
uh, yeah. What makes deception detection important in your opinion?
I think that right thinking is important, and we as a society need to be able to think clearly, think critically, and make the right decisions. And deception is like a corruption. It's like a lack of quality of information, which it stops us making the right democratic decisions. It stops us making the right economic, political, social decisions. And without that quality of information, which veracity gives, I think that society can disintegrate. We base our whole communication and life around the fact that people are supposed to be telling the truth.
You're talking about the biggest problem, which is these ways that fake news and fake communications hold us back. As countries or on large scale things. But then there's also all the numerous ways and small ways like Amazon reviews, product reviews, or online deceptions or cheating on tests. That all these various small ways also, right?
I don't even think that they are that small. They are equally
Hmm.
important. Decision making in the consumer sphere is crucial. The education system, you get people who become lawyers, doctors, and engineers who don't have the actual skills to be able to do that job. And it happens. For example, there are doctors who are recommending that people don't vaccinate their children,
Mm.
and they are using as evidence bad research. So these doctors themselves are deceptive. They often get a financial advantage from their recommendations. Maybe they have a sideline in dodgy health products which they want to push themselves, or maybe they're just selling vitamins or something. They usually have a benefit. They are using research that has a deceptive foundation. Either it's been funded by people who don't want, who want to encourage non-vaccination, or for another reason. And it leads to, we've had stories of needing to, or threatening to quarantine groups of people in order to stop measles outbreaks. And this all starts
Hmm.
from deception in a laboratory or deception in a research institution, and it spreads.
Yeah, I see so many random ideas that are, bad science and bad nutrition kind of news, dietary things like the blood type diet kind of ideas that are have no basis in science but seem to be so popular these days. Kind of reminded me of that.
Yes, and this is deception, and it's, without sounding like a crazy loon, it does really attack the fabric of society in the world that we live in. So
Yeah, definitely. It seems like a it's corroding things that would otherwise be working pretty well. Uh, yeah. Any current events recently where you thought something someone said or wrote was pretty clearly deceptive based on the kinds of linguistic clues you use?
tell you an interesting story. In one of the corporate training workshops I did with fraud investigators, one I did a few years ago. It was in 2015. I did this one, and Alan Dershowitz's statement at that time. I forget the name of the lady, but she made an accusation about Alan Dershowitz and having sex with her on Jerry Epstein's plane or on his island or something like that. And these accusations were quickly thrown out. And I looked at the Dershowitz statement back in 2015, and I looked at it I was looking for examples of something that was true. I was probably a bit more naive in this research then, and I just thought, oh, Dershowitz, he's like one of the most famous lawyers in the world. What he said must have been true. So I'm going to have a look at that as and use that. I'm trying to pull together things. I'm going to use that as an example of truth. Let me have a look first. And I had a look at a statement and did my analysis. I'm like, oh, maybe this bit here about the plane, about the airplane, seems a bit is coming up as potentially deceptive. What he's saying about the airplane. And other areas are coming up as potentially deceptive. And in particular, there's one statement where he says in this statement, "Oh, there were no young women on the island, none at all. We were shown around by an older woman." And in this statement, it just says older woman. And subsequently, now with all the Jerry Epstein is in court and stuff like that. I had a look at that again, and the older woman, apparently, according to reports, is actually a very important person. There's a woman who, I forget her last name. I think it's somebody Maxwell. One of the youngest daughters of the late Robert Maxwell was like a madam who procured girls for Jerry Epstein. So this statement, which my analysis flagged an aeroplane and this older woman, I'm now looking at it and thinking, oh, actually, Dershowitz is now under a bit of scrutiny. What I did at the time was I just parked it. I thought, oh, well, I can't use this as an example of truth. I don't think it is true, but I'm not going to say anything. So I parked it, and now I'm looking at it again and thinking, well, you were thinking then maybe there's something suspicious about him. Now a few people are saying that. Um, and that's happened to me a few times because you have to be careful about accusing people. What I found with the sports doping, when I started looking into that, I found this connection between sports doping and asthma, and that all these athletes who are denying sports doping, they have asthma, which they're allowed to take medicine for, and the medicine that they take just happens to be performance enhancing, but they get permission
Mm.
to take them. It's called a CHUI, therapeutic use exemption.
Hmm.
And Bradley Wiggins has asthma. Mo Farah has asthma. and a whole bunch of athletes at this kind of institute run by Alberto Salazar, who's this trainer who was involved in the drug scandal. A lot of them had asthma. My point with that was I do look at a few things, and I've been a bit careful about not blogging accusations. And then a year or two or a few years later, stuff has come out, and I kick myself and I think, be more brave. Just say what you think. And then I think, well, maybe you need like an anonymous
Hmm.
a blog or something where you can just, like these guys on Reddit, you just they just says
Right, and then somebody can be analyzing your statements
exactly.
and trying to figure out who you are.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes I think, maybe I should do that. You were talking about, oh, maybe go and work for Amazon, and I'm saying, oh, education. But another way to like make a difference is to have an anonymous soothsayer account.
Yeah, you could become the next QAnon, like the QAnon for good.
Exactly. Exactly. Make one forget. Why not?
Yeah, yeah. Let's work together on that. Uh,
Okay. Don't put it in the pod. Don't put that in the podcast. We'll keep that one to
okay,
ourselves.
okay. Are you being serious now? Should I
No,
take it
no.
out? I was.
I think we can do both. I think we can do
Oh,
both. I
okay.
think that's. I think we should think about it. And the podcast can be a clue.
There you go. Yeah. Are we? I'm mostly kidding, but maybe there's a little bit of truth. So
Yeah.
we'll let them figure it out. Yeah. Okay, that's it for the interview. You can get in touch with Olu via the contact page of his site, which is at outlier.blog. That's outliar.blog. And he's on Twitter at OEPOPOOLA. If you like this interview, I think you'd also like an early podcast interview of mine where I talked to Mark McClish about statement analysis. That's one of my favorites of the interviews I've done. And if you like poker at all, I've got my own books on analyzing verbal behavior in poker. It's called Verbal Poker Tells and it's on Amazon. Or you can get the ebook along with some bonus materials at my website, readingpokertells.com. And as always, if you like this podcast, I highly appreciate if you leave a rating or review on the platform you listen to. Much appreciated. Thanks. Bye.